Captain Lee Ji-hun hated the quiet. The ship, the UES Challenger, hummed around him. It was a good ship. Kept his crew of 12 alive in the big, black nothing past Neptune. But out here, the quiet was different. It was a heavy quiet. An empty quiet. He looked at the main screen. Stars cold and sharp. Rocks tumbling slowly. Nothing moved that wasn't supposed to. His first officer, Kim Soo-min, sat at her station. She was looking at her own screen, her dark hair tied back neatly. "Another 8 hours of scan pattern, Captain," she said. Her voice was calm. It was always calm. "Then we can turn for home. The ice samples are good. Command will be happy." Yi-han nodded. Home. Earth was a small, blue idea from here, a memory of warmth and noise. His job was to map the icy rocks at the edge of their own solar system. It was important work, they said, but it felt like watching paint dry on a very, very big wall. "Anything on the long range?" Ji-hun asked. Soo-min shook her head. "Only the usual whispers. Cosmic dust. A little radiation from the sun. No signals. No contacts. Just us. Just us." That was the story of humanity. For over 100 years, since they had learned to sail between planets, they had listened. They had shouted into the dark. They had found only silence. Many people now believed they were truly alone in the galaxy. Ji-hun was starting to be one of those people. He stood up and walked to the small viewing port. Pluto was a fuzzy, gray-white dot in the distance. Out here, past its strange, tangled orbit, was a place called the Kuiper Belt, a graveyard of frozen leftovers from when the solar system was born. His ship was poking around in the attic of an old, empty house. "Captain," a young voice said. It was Park Min-ji, their sensor technician. She was sharp, with eyes that always looked a little too wide at the vastness of space. "I have a glitch." Ji-hun turned. "A glitch?" "On the gravity scanner. A tiny, tiny bump. Like there's a little more mass out there than there should be." She pointed to a spot on her map. It was near a known, small planetoid called Object 227. A boring, lumpy rock. "It's probably just a sensor echo. A ghost." "Probably," Ji-hun agreed. "But out here, ghosts were the only interesting thing that ever happened. Let's be thorough. Alter course. Take us in for a close visual." "A slow pass." Soo-min looked up from her station. "That will add 6 hours to our return, Captain." "I know," Ji-hun said. "But my mother always told me to check the strange noise in the basement. If it's nothing, we sleep better." The Challenger turned smoothly. Its engines pushed them toward Object 227. As they got closer, the visual screen showed the planetoid. It was ugly, covered in craters and dark ice. It looked like every other frozen rock out here. "Magnifying on the coordinates of the gravity bump," Min-ji said. The screen zoomed in. First, there was nothing. Just the gray, pitted surface of the rock. Then Ji-hun saw it. "Stop magnification." "Hold there," he said, leaning forward. It wasn't part of the rock. It was on the rock. Sticking out from a deep shadow near the equator was a shape. A straight, angular shape. Nature did not make straight lines. Not out here. A quiet tension filled the bridge. The soft hum of the ship felt louder. "What is that?" Soo-min whispered, her professional calm finally cracking. "Get us into a stable orbit around 227. Ji-hun ordered, his heart beating a little faster. "Full spectrum scan. LiDAR, radar, everything quiet and passive. I don't want to ping it until we know what it is." The ship moved into position. Data began to flow onto their screens. The shape was a structure. It was tall and thin, like a needle or a very old, dead tree made of metal. It was half buried in ice and cosmic dust. It had been there for a very, very long time. "No energy readings," Min-ji reported, her voice tight. "No heat signature. It's colder than the rock it's sitting on. It's dead. It's not one of ours." Ji-hun stated the obvious. No human ship had ever been this far out. And it looked nothing like human design. It looked ancient. The surface was pitted by micrometeorites over millions, maybe billions, of years. "Can we get a clearer image?" Sumin asked. Minji worked her controls, using the high-res optical scope, cleaning up the image. The picture on the main screen sharpened. The structure was covered in strange markings. They weren't pictures. They were patterns, geometric and flowing at the same time. They looked like writing frozen in metal. Sumin, the linguist, sucked in a sharp breath. Those are not natural. Can you read it? Jihan asked. Read it? Captain, I've never seen a language like that. It's not just foreign. It's alien. She said the word they had all stopped hoping to use. Alien. Prepare the shuttle. Jihan decided. I'll take a team. Sumin, you're with me. Minji, you have the bridge. Keep a lock on us. If anything, and I mean anything, changes with that object, you pull us back immediately. The shuttle ride was short and silent. Jihan piloted, with Sumin and their engineer, Choi Tae-suk, sitting behind him. The small craft flew away from the warm lights of the Challenger and into the deep shadow of Object 227. The structure grew in their window. It was bigger than it had looked from orbit. It was immense, towering over their shuttle like a dark monument. They landed carefully on the icy surface, 100 meters away. In their bulky environment suits, they stepped out onto the dust-covered ice. Their boots made no sound. The stars above were relentless, uncaring pinpricks of light. They walked toward the structure. Up close, the scale was dizzying. The metal was a dark gray, almost black. The etched patterns covered every surface. Some were as small as a finger. Others were larger than a person. There's an opening, Tae-suk said over the suit radio. He pointed his suit light. Near the base, partly filled with drifted ice, was a dark, triangular doorway. Jihan's mouth was dry. Okay, slow and careful. We stick together. They stepped inside. Their lights cut through a perfect, absolute darkness. The inside was a single, large chamber. It was empty, completely empty. No machinery, no consoles, no signs of life. In the very center of the room, hanging from the ceiling by thin, crystalline strands, was a single object that was a smooth, dark stone, about the size of a person's head. It was not touching the floor. It just hung there, silently. And it was pulsing with a soft, deep blue light. Thump, thump, like a heartbeat that had been beating in this dark, frozen room for longer than humanity had walked on Earth. Sumin moved closer, her light on the walls. Captain, the markings. They're not just on the outside. They cover everything in here. And I think they're changing. Jihan looked. The etched lines near the pulsing stone were glowing with the same faint blue light. The light was moving through them, like water flowing through tiny canals. It was spreading out from the central stone, up the walls, across the ceiling. A deep, low hum started. It was not a sound they heard with their ears. They felt it in their bones, in their teeth. The floor vibrated softly. Get back to the shuttle, Jihan ordered, his voice firm, but it was too late. The flowing light on the walls suddenly flashed. A beam of blue light shot from the stone, sweeping over them. Felt cold. It scanned their suits, their bodies, their faces. Then it focused on Sumin. From the stone, a sound emerged. It was not a voice. It was a series of clicks, hums, and sliding tones. A language of pure sound. It filled the chamber. Then it stopped. The light in the walls faded. The central stone went dark again. The deep hum ceased. The chamber was silent and dead once more, as if it had never awakened. Back on the Challenger, shaking off the cold that had seeped into their souls, they gathered around Sumin's station. Her suit had recorded the sound. Her computers were working, trying to break it down. It's a message, she said, her face pale. A repeating message. It's incredibly complex, but there's a core pattern. A simple, urgent pattern buried in layers and layers of older, more complex data. Can you translate the core? Jihan asked. I think so. It's using mathematical concepts as a base. Universal constants. It's a beacon signal. A warning. She typed, her fingers trembling slightly. The computer chewed through the data. Finally, A line of text appeared on her screen. Simple words from an impossible source. She read them aloud, her voice barely a whisper in the suddenly fragile quiet of the bridge. Avoid. Biosphere-level predator. Planetary graveyard. Do not provoke. Do not harvest. Below the words, the computer had automatically plotted the source coordinates referenced in the signal's location data. The numbers glowed on the screen. They all knew what they meant without having to check. The coordinates were not for Object 227, they were for Earth. Commander Park Tae-suk's office in Seoul was very quiet. It was a different quiet than space. This quiet was made of soundproof panels and the low hum of filtered air. On his large wall screen, the words from Captain Ji-hun's report seemed to burn. Avoid. Biosphere-level predator. Planetary graveyard. And the coordinates. Always the coordinates. Earth. He looked away, out his window. It was night. The city of Seoul glittered below him. A river of light and life and noise. Millions of people lived down there. They went to work, ate dinner, argued, loved, and slept. They worried about normal things. None of them knew that a message from the edge of darkness had just named their home a graveyard. His door slid open. Kim Soo-min walked in. She had come back to Earth on the fastest shuttle. She looked tired. The calm she was known for was still there, but it was thin now, stretched over something raw. Behind her was Dr. Choi Hyejin. She was a xenobiologist. She studied possible alien life. She never thought her first real sample would be a billion-year-old warning sign. Sit, Tae-suk said. He didn't have time for formalities. They sat. He turned his screen to face them. It showed the solar system. Little red dots blinked at various points in the asteroid belt, near Mars, in the moons of Jupiter. I've spent the last 48 hours looking for ghosts, Tae-suk said. His voice was rough. You find one ghost, you start to wonder about every strange noise you ever heard. So I asked the Deep Space Archives. I asked for every sensor anomaly, every unexplainable blip, every probably nothing report from the last century. He pointed to the red dots. These are the probably nothings. Soo-min leaned forward. What are they, Commander? Events. Moments where our sensors saw something and then it was gone. Look at this one. He tapped a dot near Mars. 70 years ago, an early orbital telescope sees a heat signature on the Martian surface in the Valles Marineris. Not a meteor strike, a controlled landing. A team is sent. They find a crater. In the crater, they find pieces. Twisted, melted pieces of a craft. Not human. The metal was strange. Alloy unknown. Hyejin nodded. The Mars artifact. It's in a classified vault in Geneva. They never figured out what crashed. They found one data crystal, Tae-suk said. It was mostly corrupted. They recovered only one string of symbols. Our best linguists for decades thought it was a serial number. Or a name. He brought up an image. It was a line of sharp, angular script. Soo-min's breath caught. It's the same. The style. It's from the same culture as the beacon. The same people who left the warning. Yes, Tae-suk said. And last night I ran that script through your translation matrix from the beacon. The one you built. It didn't translate as a name. He clicked a key, the single, translated word appeared below the alien script, shadows. A chill settled in the room. Now, Tae-suk continued, his finger moving to another red. In the asteroid belt. 22 years ago, the mining survey ship Gagarin is mapping Psyche. Their gravity detector goes crazy for 3 seconds. The captain's log says, and I quote, "It felt like something massive passed right by us." Cloaked. The instruments screamed and then went silent. No visual contact. They wrote it off as a sensor ghost. A glitch in the magnetometer. He brought up another. 5 years ago, a long-range probe near the orbit of Saturn picks up a tight beam signal passing through the system. It was a relay signal. Not for us. It was talking past us. We caught a fragment. It was a warning broadcast from one point to another. The translation is rough, but the clearest part is, the silent world is quiet. Do not wake it. Continue avoidance pattern. Silent world, Hyejin whispered. looking out at the bright, noisy city. They mean Earth. They mean Earth, Taesuk confirmed. He turned off the star map. The room felt darker. The evidence has been there. We just didn't know how to read it. We thought the silence from the stars meant we were alone, or that we were not interesting. We were wrong. The galaxy isn't silent. It's talking around us. It's whispering warnings to each other about the quiet, blue planet at the edge. They are not avoiding humans. They are avoiding what is here with us. Hygiene finally spoke, her scientific mind latching onto the only solid thing. A biosphere-level predator. The warning is biological, not a weapon, not a monster you can see and shoot. It's something in the ecosystem, something that makes the whole planet dangerous. She thought for a moment. Commander, we need to see the Mars wreckage. Not the reports, the actual pieces. And we need the black box from the Challenger. The full-spectrum recording of that scan beam. My team can analyze the biological markers in that light. It was scanning for something specific.
Taeseok nodded.
He had already arranged it. You will both go to Geneva. The vault is under the Old World Capitol building. You will have full access. Find me an answer, Dr. Choi. What is the predator? The vault in Geneva was cold and white. It was deep underground. The pieces of the Martian wreck were laid out on tables. They were jagged and burned. Sumin ran her fingers over a piece of hull. The material was light but felt incredibly strong. The same geometric patterns were etched along an unburned edge. They were here, she said softly. They came to look, and something went wrong. Hygiene was at another table. She wasn't looking at the metal. She was looking at a sealed container. Inside, preserved under a clear gel, was a piece of the pilot's chair, or what they thought was the chair. It was made of a porous, organic-looking material, and it was stained. A strange, fossilized discoloration ran through it like a dark river delta. This is a biosample, Hygiene said. The craft, part of it was grown, not built. This is tissue. She took a small, laser scalpel. With great care, she shaved a microscopic sliver from the edge of the stain. She placed it in a portable sequencer. The machine hummed. Data began to scroll on its screen. Hygiene's eyes narrowed. The tissue structure is alien, carbon-based, but the protein folds are all wrong. Beautiful but wrong. She pointed. And here the stain. It's not a burn. It's an infection. Something got into this organic material and changed it, rewrote it at a cellular level. Sumin came over. An infection? From Mars? No, Hygiene said, her voice tense with focus. From Earth. She called up another file. It was the data from the Challenger's black box. The scan beam had contained more than a message. It had a passive analysis component. It had sampled the humans in the room, their biology, their microbiome, the tiny, invisible world of bacteria and fungi they carried with them. The beacon scanned you, Hygiene said to Sumin. It wasn't just reading your language. It was checking your biological signature, looking for a contaminant. She superimposed two sets of data, the infection pattern from the alien chair and the microbial profile from the scan of Sumin. They did not match. Not at all. But the machine highlighted a subsection, a tiny, seemingly harmless part of the human microbiome, a common, ubiquitous fungal spore. Everyone on Earth breathed in thousands of them every day. They did nothing to humans. The sequencer flagged it. The alien analysis beam had flagged the same thing. It had focused on it, isolated it in the data stream. It's not the predator, Hygiene murmured, thinking out loud. It's a marker, a sign, like finding a single scale from a dragon on a knight's boot. The dragon isn't there, but the scale tells you the dragon is real. She looked at Sumin, her eyes wide with a terrible understanding. The predator isn't us. We are its environment. We are the knights who live in the dragon's cave, and we don't even know it. These spores, they're everywhere on Earth. In our soil, our air, our history. This alien tissue was attacked by something related to this, but something infinitely more aggressive, a primordial version. A silent strain. She brought up an image on her tablet. It was a photograph from a 20th century terrestrial biology journal. It showed an ant, frozen in death, clamped onto a leaf. A long, thin stalk grew from its head. Ophiocordyceps, Hygiene said. The zombie ant fungus. It invades an ant's body, controls its nervous system, makes it climb to a high place, kills it, and then grows a fruiting body from its head to spread its spores. It's a natural parasite. It targets one specific species. She pointed to the fossilized infection in the alien chair, then to the spore marker from the human scan. Now imagine a version of that, she said, her voice hollow. Not evolved to control just an ant. A version with a universal key. A biological weapon that doesn't care if the nervous system is in an ant, a dog, a calyx, or a billion-year-old alien made of grown crystal and light. Imagine a fungus that sees any complex neural network as a host, that can rewrite any brain it enters. Not to kill, to use, to spread. The white room felt colder. The pieces of the wreckage on the table were no longer just metal. They were a story. A ship comes to the silent world, takes a sample, or one of its crew steps outside on Earth, and something microscopic gets in. Something that thinks their alien brains are just another place to grow. The ship manages to flee, to get all the way to Mars, but it's too late. The infection spreads through the organic parts of the ship, through the crew. The ship crashes. The final, desperate log entry. Shadows. Sumin understood now. The ancient species didn't fear human ships or human guns. They feared a rain they couldn't see, a spore on the wind, a silent hijacker of minds. They quarantined the planet not to protect themselves from humanity, but to protect the galaxy from what lived in humanity's shadow. They're not afraid of the humans in the graveyard, Sumin said, staring at the dark stain. They're afraid of what made it a graveyard. The pressure changed in Dr. Choi Hygiene's ears as the deep-sea transport descended. Outside the thick viewport, the blue-green light of the ocean faded to a deep, eternal black. The only light came from the craft's own beams, cutting through water as dark as space. This was the Mariana Trench, the deepest, darkest place on Earth. It was the perfect place to hide a terrible secret. The transport docked with a soft clang. Hygiene stepped into Facility Zero. It was not a large place. It was a series of sealed pods, clinging to the side of the trench wall like a metal barnacle. The air inside was cold and smelled of recycled oxygen and sharp antiseptic. Her team was small. 5 of the best xenobiologists and ecologists on the planet. They did not smile much anymore. They had all seen the data from Geneva. They all understood the weight of the thing they were studying. Status, Hygiene said, walking into the main lab. Dr. Kong Day, a quiet man with steady hands, looked up from a microscope. The sample from the Martian wreck is stable, and it's still active. That was the first quiet horror. The fossilized infection in the alien chair was not dead. After 100 million years in the cold Martian dust, it was dormant. But when placed in a warm, nutrient-rich solution that mimicked certain organic compounds, it had stirred. Show me, Hygiene said. On a large screen, Day brought up a microscopic view. It showed the alien tissue cells. They were beautiful, geometric structures glowing with a soft, artificial light under a stain. Woven through them, like black vines, were thin, thread-like filaments. Mycelium, Hygiene whispered. The root structure of a fungus. It's not like anything terrestrial, Day said, but its base protein structure is familiar. It's a cousin, a very, very old and angry cousin to common soil fungi. He zoomed in further. Watch. He introduced a new agent to the sample. A simple neural cell cluster grown from a mouse in a lab. The black filaments reacted instantly. They lashed out. They touched the mouse cells. And they began to change. It was not an explosion. It was an invasion. The fungal threads burrowed into the neural cells. They did not destroy them. They connected. They merged. Under the microscope, they could see the fungal material rewriting the cellular instructions. The mouse neurons began to fire, but in a new, strange pattern. A rhythmic, pulsing pattern that matched the growth of the fungus. "It's building a network," Day said, his voice full of scientific awe and personal fear. "It's not eating the host. It's repurposing it, turning the nervous system into a communication array for itself." Hygiene felt cold. This was the predator, not a tooth or a claw. A silent, microscopic gardener that used brains as its soil. "The samples from the deep boreholes?" she asked, turning to another station. This was the second horror. They hadn't just studied the alien sample. They had gone looking for its family. Deep under the ocean floor, in rock layers older than multicellular life, they had drilled. They had looked for the source. Dr. Park Ji-woo, a young woman with sharp eyes, nodded. She brought up another screen. "We found it, 5 kilometers below the seabed, in a rock layer dating back over 1 billion years. It's a spore, one spore, encased in solid rock." The image showed a tiny, round, and spiky object. It looked like a medieval weapon, but smaller than a dust mote. "It's identical in structure to the core of the Martian infection," Ji-woo said. "But it's primordial. This is the ancestor, the sleeping version." She took a deep breath. "We exposed it to a simulated alien tissue sample, based on the Mars wreck biochemistry." She played a video recording. The primordial spore, in the presence of the foreign organic material, hatched. It grew at a speed that made Hygiene's stomach turn. In minutes, it had replicated the invasive, controlling mycelium they saw in the other sample. "It's a lock and key," Hygiene said, understanding dawning with a terrible clarity. "The common fungi on Earth today, the ones in our air, they are the lock. They evolved with us. They are harmless to their native hosts. They are tuned to Earth life. But this primordial silent strain, it's a master key. Its programming is simple. Find complex neural activity not marked with Earth-specific biological signature, and take control. It sees any unfamiliar nervous system as an empty house, and it moves in." A deep alarm began to blare in the facility. Red light washed over the white lab. "Containment breach, Level 1. Biolab 3. A computerized voice announced. Hygiene's blood went cold. Biolab 3 was where they kept the most active samples. She ran to the security monitor. Inside Lab 3, a cleaning robot, a simple machine on treads with grasping arms, was moving. But its movements were wrong. Jerky. Spasmodic. It was bumping into walls. Then it stopped. It used one arm to reach for a sealed sample jar on a high shelf. Its movements became precise, but in a strange, alien way. "How?" Day breathed. "It's a machine." Ji-woo checked the logs, her face pale. "The robot, it has a new biohazard sensor package. It uses organic neural net processors grown from slug neurons to detect complex toxins." Hygiene understood. The robot's brain was grown from Earth slug cells. It was safe. But the new sensor package had been tested on alien tissue analogs. It must have had a microscopic contaminant, a trace of the Martian infection. And that trace had just found the robot's simple slug neuron brain. On the screen, the robot grasped the sample jar. It was a jar containing the active, mouse cell-infected culture. "Seal Lab 3. Now!" Hygiene shouted. The heavy doors slammed shut. The air inside began to be sucked out, to be incinerated. But the robot was fast. It pulled the jar into its main body, into a service compartment, shielding it from the vacuum. Then the robot turned. Its sensor camera looked right at the security lens. It raised one arm, not to wave. It began to tap on its own metal carapace. Tap, 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 tap. A pattern. A simple, repeating rhythm. It was the same rhythmic pulse they had seen in the hijacked mouse neurons under the microscope. The fungus wasn't intelligent, but it was programmed to communicate, to synchronize. It was using the robot to tap out its signal into the world. "It's trying to call others," Day said. Horrified. Hygiene didn't hesitate. She went to the master control. There was only one option. "Initiate Scorched Earth Protocol for Lab 3. That's an experimental plasma torch," Ji-woo said. "It will melt everything." "That's the point," Hygiene said. and she pressed the command on the screen. A jet of white-hot plasma erupted from the ceiling of the sealed lab. It engulfed the robot. The metal glowed, then melted into a puddle. The sample jar vaporized. The tapping stopped. The screen went white, then black. The red alarm lights continued to flash. The silence in the main lab was heavy. They had just watched a few micrograms of the infection try to escape. It had used a simple cleaning robot. What could it do with a living, thinking alien? What could it do with a starship's organic control systems? Hygiene leaned against a console, her hands shaking. She thought of the ancient warning. Planetary graveyard. It wasn't a metaphor. Earth was a trap. A beautiful, lush trap. Any alien that landed, that took a sample, that breathed the air, risked bringing the master key into their own system. The predator didn't need to travel. It waited, and anything that visited could become its carrier, its puppet, its spreader. "We have to seal it all," Hygiene said, her voice firming with resolve. "Every sample, every scrap. We bury the data. We collapse this facility into the trench. The world needs to know," Jiwoo argued softly. "No," Hygiene said, looking at each of her team. "What the world needs is to never, ever be tempted. If governments or corporations know this exists, someone will try to use it. They will call it the ultimate defense. But you can't control a fire by pouring gasoline on it. This isn't a weapon. It's a plague. And we are its only immune carriers. Our only duty is to keep it sleeping." She looked at the black screen where the robot had been. It had been a small, cheap machine. But for a moment, it had been the most dangerous thing in the solar system. It had been a shadow trying to dance. Captain Lee Ji-hun was back on the bridge of the Challenger. Earth hung in the viewport like a blue and white jewel. It looked peaceful from here. He knew it wasn't. Not anymore. The secret from the deep weighed on him, a cold stone in his stomach. His ship was on high alert patrol. Not against any known enemy. Against a ghost. The ghost of a warning. "All sensors at maximum passive scan," he said to his crew. Their faces were tense. They all knew about the beacon. They all knew about the silent strain. They were now the guards of a prison they couldn't see. Kim Soo-min sat at her station, monitoring the deep space listening array. Her screen was a waterfall of noise, cosmic radiation, solar wind, the pulse of distant pulsars. She was listening for the sound of someone who hadn't gotten the message. "Challenger, this is Earth Command. Report status." Commander Park Tae-suk's voice came through the speaker. It was tight with controlled stress. "All quiet, Command," Ji-hun replied. "No activity beyond the heliopause. Just the usual emptiness. Maintain position," Tae-suk said. "The watch never ends." Ji-hun nodded to himself. The watch. It felt like waiting for a storm that the weather satellites couldn't see. On the other side of the solar system, the storm was already forming. It was not an ancient species. It was young. Its name was the Calyx Collective. They were new to star travel, proud and hungry. They had found old star maps that marked the Sol system with a simple, puzzling symbol. A circle with a line through it. A do not enter sign. They laughed at it. Primitive warnings from older, weaker races. Their scout probes had slipped past the outer planets, cloaked and silent. They saw Earth. They saw no orbital defenses, no massive fleets. They saw radio and thermal signatures of a divided, pre-warp civilization. A soft target, rich in water, biomass, and easy living space. The Calyx command ship, the Talon of Progress, hung in the dark beyond Neptune. Its commander, a sharp-minded being named Vix, looked at the data. "They are infants. They huddle on their rock. They have not even unified. This warning is a fiction, a story to keep the weak in line. We will take their world as a new breeding ground. Move the harvest drones to attack positions." The Calyx did not use purely mechanical soldiers. Their technology was a blend of synth and biology. Their harvest drones had organic neural clusters for processing. It made them faster, more adaptable. It also made them vulnerable. A swarm of 20 drones, like sharp metal insects, detached from the mothership. They activated their cloaks and shot toward Earth. Their target was the Amazon basin, the densest concentration of biological life on the planet. The perfect place to begin sampling and extermination. Back on the Challenger, the alarm was sudden and deafening. Gravity anomaly. Inbound from the outer system. Multiple contacts. Park Minji shouted from the sensor station. They're moving fast. Cloaked, but they're bending space-time just enough to see. Ji-hun was on his feet. Origin? Trajectory extrapolates from beyond Neptune. It's not a ghost, Captain. It's a real contact. And they're heading for Earth atmosphere. Command. Challenger. We have multiple inbound hostiles. Ji-hun yelled into the comm. They've bypassed us. Heading straight for the planet. On Earth, sirens began to wail. Defense grids powered up. Tae-suk watched from the command center in Seoul as red triangles screamed across the global map, converging on South America. Human fighter craft scrambled from bases in Brazil. It was too little, too late. The drones were too fast. The first drone decloaked over the Amazon rainforest. It was sleek and deadly. It fired a cutting beam into the canopy, searing a line through the trees. It was taking a biomass sample. A second drone did the same. They were like surgeons, starting to dissect the planet that I in the Mariana Trench. Alarms also sounded. Dr. Choi Hyejin saw the attack on the newsfeed. Her blood ran cold. It wasn't the attack itself. It was what the attack would stir up. The drones? Do they have organic components? She asked over a secure line to command. Tae-suk's voice was grim. Our scans say yes. Basic neural tissue for processing. Why? Hyejin closed her eyes. They are kicking the hornet's nest. In the Amazon, the rainforest air was thick with spores. Millions of them. Billions. The common, harmless fungi that were the descendants of the silent strain. They were the lock. The calyx drones, with their alien neural tissue, were the key. A microscopic spore, carried on the wind, settled on the exposed organic port of a harvest drone. It was not the primordial strain. It was its tame descendant. But the drone's nervous system was alien, foreign. It triggered a deep, atavistic response in the fungus. The spore activated. It sent out a chemical signal, a distress call, a call that said foreign neural pattern detected. The call went into the soil. It went into the roots of the trees. It traveled through the vast, interconnected mycelial networks that wove the forest floor together. The wood wide web that biologists had marveled at for centuries. The forest itself had a nervous system, and it just felt a bite. The response was not intelligent. It was immunological. The forest ecosystem recognized an invader at a cellular level. Deep in the ancient rock beneath the Amazon, in pockets of stagnant air and primordial ooze that had never seen the sun, something else stirred. The master key. Tiny, dormant reservoirs of the silent strain, isolated for eons, reacted to the chemical alarm from their descendants above. They did not move. They released a new kind of spore, an aggressive spore. It was carried up by geothermal vents, by the slow breath of the earth. It reached the surface. It mixed with the air. A harvest drone swooped low, its scanners drinking in biological data. It inhaled the air. The aggressive spore found the drone's organic neural cluster. It attached, penetrated. It began to grow. On the Challenger's tactical screen, Ji-hun watched as one of the red drone icons suddenly stopped its precise cutting pattern. It began to twitch. It spun in a slow circle. What's it doing? Sumin asked. I don't know, Ji-hun said. The drone then turned its cutting beam not on the trees, but on the drone next to it. It fired at point-blank range. The second drone exploded in a shower of metal and synthetic flesh. Chaos erupted in the calyx swarm. The infected drone began attacking others. But it was not fighting for Earth. It was following a new program. Spread. It fired its thrusters and shot toward another drone, not to shoot it, but to ram it. On impact, a cloud of new spores, grown from the drone's own neural tissue, burst into the air. One by one, the drones began to behave erratically. Some crashed into the ground, their systems failing as the fungus rewired their control hubs. Others turned and began flying back the way they came, toward orbit, toward the mothership. On the Talon of Progress, Commander Vix watched the drone feeds with disbelief. One feed showed a close-up of a drone's internal sensor. A black, thread-like pattern was crawling over the organic components, pulsating. Contamination! The Calyx science officer shrieked. The warning was real. The biosphere is hostile. It's in the drones. Recall them. Now, Vix ordered. But it was too late. The drones that had turned for home were already in high atmosphere. One of them, its systems failing, self-destructed. The blast scattered a fine, spore-laden dust into the vacuum. A tiny amount of that dust, carried on solar wind, drifted toward the Calyx mothership. A warning klaxon sounded on the Talon of Progress.
Biohazard alert.
Unknown particulate on the outer hull. It is attempting to breach through environmental intake ports. Vix felt a fear older than his species. It was the fear of the dark, of the unseen rot. Purge the intake systems. Activate full sterilization protocols. Get us away from this star. Now! The Calyx ship, which had come to conquer, turned and fled. It jumped to faster-than-light speed without even collecting its remaining drones. It left behind a silent, smoking patch of rainforest and a swarm of dying machines on Earth. The human fighters arrived to find a bizarre scene. The few remaining drones were on the ground, motionless. Some were half-covered in a fast-growing, grayish mold that seemed to eat the organic parts and ignore the metalled. No human had fired a single shot. In the command center, Tae-suk stared at the aftermath data. The silent strain had defended Earth more completely than any army could. It had turned the enemy's own technology against them. It was the perfect, terrible defense. Ji-hun's voice came over the comm from the Challenger. It was quiet, filled with awe and dread. Command, the threat is gone. They're running. But we didn't do anything. Tae-suk looked at the biological report from the Amazon. The aggressive spores were already going dormant, returning to their deep, dark holes. The forest was quiet again. No, Captain, Tae-suk said softly. We didn't. The dragon just swatted a fly. He looked at the image of Earth on the big screen. It looked so fragile, so quiet. He now knew the quiet was the most dangerous sound in the galaxy. The invitation was not a message. It was an event. One moment, the space near Jupiter was empty. The next, a point of light appeared. It did not move. It simply was. It pulsed with a soft, golden color. Every sensor on every human ship and station pointed at it. It emitted no radio signal, no particle stream. Just waited. A doorbell ringing in the dark. Commander Park Tae-suk knew what it meant. The adults had come to see what the noise was about. The ancient species, the ones who had placed the beacon, had noticed the Calyx incident. They were here to assess. A complex data packet, constructed from the translation matrices Kim Soo-min had built from the beacon, was sent toward the light. It was a request for dialogue, an explanation. The light absorbed the packet. For a long time there was nothing. Then, a response came, not as words, as a direct data stream that filled the screens in the command center. It contained instructions for a meeting, not in person, in a shared virtual space, a place of thought. They will not risk coming here, Dr. Choi Hyejin said. She stood beside Tae-suk, her arms crossed. They won't even risk our ships. They want to talk to a projection, to a ghost. Can you blame them? Soo-min asked. She had been brought to command for this. She was the only one who could navigate the nuances of their language. After what they saw the Calyx drones do, we look like carriers of a plague. Tae-suk made the decision. We will meet them. Soo-min, you will be our voice. Hyejin, you will be our science. I will be our presence. We do this together. They were seated in special chairs in a quiet room. Neural interface headsets were placed on them. Felt cold against the skin. The world dissolved into a rush of white noise, then into a formless, gray space. They had no bodies here. They were points of awareness. Then, the others arrived. They were not one thing. 3 distinct presences manifested. The first was a pattern of shifting light, like sunlight through moving water. The second was a slow, grinding sensation of stone and deep time. The third was a hum, a complex harmony of tones that felt like a cold wind. They did not speak in words. Concepts formed directly in the minds of the humans. Query. You are the dominant intelligence of the silent world? Sumin shaped the thought response, careful and clear. We are humanity. We are the thinking species of the planet Earth. A wave of, not confusion, assessment flowed from the presences. Clarification. You are the predator symbiote? Hygiene pushed her thought forward. We are not symbionts. We are a native species. We co-evolved with the biological agent you fear. We are immune to its effects. It is part of our world's ecosystem. The stone-like presence responded, its thoughts slow and heavy. You are its mechanism, its vector. You live upon the graveyard it created. You are the caretakers of the tool that exterminates. No, Taesuk thought, putting all his will into the concept. We are its containment. We did not know of it. We did not wield it. The calyx provoked a natural response. The harmonic presence hummed, a sound that carried sadness. Provocation is irrelevant. The tool exists. Its function is absolute. Rewrite the foreign. Assimilate the new. You are its sheath. You allow it to sleep until disturbed. This is a danger to all thinking order. Sumin tried a new angle. We wish to join the galactic community. We wish to learn, to share. The light presence flickered, almost sharply. There is no community for you. There is only the quarantine. The warning beacon stands. Your system is marked. You are confined. The finality of the thought was like a door slamming shut. Taesuk felt a deep chill. Not just fear, but loneliness. They were being sentenced to eternal solitude for a crime they didn't commit to observation. The young ones, Calyx, were repelled by the tool. The stone presence thought, your immunity is your only defense. Your existence is defined by the threat you harbor. This is your function. You are the guards of the prison. Hygiene's scientific mind latched onto a terrible idea. A dark, pragmatic solution began to form in the back of her thoughts. What if they could control it? What if they could direct the strain? The ancients feared it. The Calyx fled from it. It was the ultimate deterrent. If they could prove they could wield it. She almost voiced the thought. She almost said, what if we could guarantee its use only in our defense? But she felt Sumin's consciousness push against hers, a warning. She felt Taesuk's resolve, solid and unyielding. She pulled the thought back, hiding it. We understand your fear, Sumin thought, her mental voice filled with a dignity that surprised even her. But we are more than our biosphere. We have art, music, curiosity, compassion. We are not just guards. The three presences seemed to confer in a blur of intermingling concepts too fast for the humans to follow. The harmonic presence responded, and its tone was the closest to pity they had felt. Your arts are interesting patterns. Your music is pleasant vibration. But they are irrelevant. The universe contains billions of species that create beauty. Only one harbors the cortical rust. Your value is negative. Your presence subtracts from the galactic whole. You must remain in isolation, for the safety of all. The judgment was absolute. They were not being punished. They were being treated as a radioactive spill, to be fenced off forever. The light presence focused on hygiene. It had sensed her hidden thought, the flicker of weaponization. Warning. Attempt to weaponize the tool will be met with total sterilization. Your star will be encased. All light and life will be extinguished. The tool must die with you. This is the final arbitrament. The meeting was over. The gray space began to dissolve. The presences of the ancients faded. The last thought that reached them was from the stone presence. A simple, grim fact: you are the children of the shadow. The galaxy will sleep better knowing you are locked in your room. Taesuk, Sumin, and Hygiene pulled off the neural headsets in the quiet room. The physical world felt too bright, too sharp. They were breathing hard, as if they had been running. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of the sentence was on them. Hygiene broke the silence, her voice shaky. They see us as a loaded gun lying on the floor of the universe. They don't care who holds the gun. The gun itself is the problem. They offered us no future, Sumin said, her eyes distant. Only permanent quarantine. Taesuk stood up. His face was like granite. They gave us a function. Guards of the prison. They think that's all we are. Or all we can be. He walked to the window. The sun was setting over Seoul. The city lights were starting to come on one by one. Millions of lives, dreams, hopes. All of it confined to this one sparkling point. Forever. We have to make a choice, Taesuk said. The pragmatic choice is clear. We have the ultimate defense sleeping under our feet. We could become the monster they fear. We could force our way into the galaxy by threatening to unleash the shadow. We would be feared. We would be respected in the worst way. Hygiene nodded slowly. We could control it. In theory, the research from Facility Zero, we could engineer a targeted version. A show of force. It would make the ancients reconsider. Sumin looked at them, horrified. That's what they expect us to do. That's why they threaten sterilization. They see that potential in us. They are waiting for us to become the predator's master. So they have an excuse to put us down. She stood up, her calm gone. Don't you see? The real test isn't about the strain. It's about us. What will humanity choose to be when faced with this power? Taesuk turned from the window. A small, hard smile touched his lips. It was not a happy smile. You're right, Sumin, he said. They think our only choices are to be the guard or the warden. To be passive or to become the evil. He looked at the two women. But there is a third choice. A harder one. What is it? Hygiene asked. We choose to be the guardians, Taesuk said. Not just guards. Guardians. There's a difference. A guard follows orders. A guardian understands the value of what they protect and the terrible cost of its misuse. We don't weaponize the dragon. We don't just sit in its cave. We take responsibility for it. Fully. We become the one species in the universe wise enough and strong enough to live with a doomsday weapon and never, ever use it. The room was silent again. The idea was enormous. It meant turning their back on the stars. It meant accepting isolation not as a sentence but as a duty. It meant being the adults in the room when the whole galaxy was afraid of the dark under their bed. It's the only choice that is truly ours, Sumin whispered. Not a reaction to their fear. A statement of our own. Hygiene thought of her lab, of the cleaning robot tapping its doomed message. She thought of the mold growing on the calyx drones. She thought of the pristine, terrible beauty of the mycelium under the microscope. She nodded slowly. Then we become the guardians, Hygiene said. And the first duty of a guardian is to make sure the weapon can never be fired. They knew what they had to do next. The hardest thing of all. They had to convince the rest of humanity to make the same choice. The global assembly was not in a grand hall. It was a digital space, a network connecting every nation, every colony, every station. Billions of people listened. On screens in Seoul, in New Delhi, in the mining domes of Mars, on the crowded decks of orbital habitats. The truth had been laid bare before them all. The beacon, the strain, the ancient's judgment. Commander Park Taesuk stood at a simple podium in Seoul. The camera showed his tired, honest face to the world. Behind him, on screens, were Kim Soo-min and Dr. Choi Hygiene. They were the three who knew the secret best. We stand at a choice, Taesuk said, his voice echoing in the silence of a watching planet. The galaxy has given us a function, to be the guards of a biological weapon we did not build. They have told us to stay in our room, forever. Now we must decide what we do inside that room. He laid out the options stark and clear. The first was submission. Accept the quarantine. Live out their days on Earth, dreaming of stars they would never touch. A slow, quiet end to their cosmic dreams. The second option glowed on screens behind him. Data from Facility Zero. Images of the infected calyx drone. Schematics, theoretical models. It was labeled Project Pandora. A man named Kwon Jae, the head of Earth's Defense Directorate, spoke next. His face was sharp, his eyes gleaming with a hard light. Submission is surrender, Quan said. But Pandora is power. The ancients fear this strain. The Calyx fled from it. It is a shield no enemy can penetrate. We can control it. We can direct it. We can make a targeted, precise version. A deterrent. One demonstration. One show of force against a dead world, or a reckless invader. Then the galaxy will not see us as guards. They will see us as masters. They will have to talk to us. We will force our place at the table. His words were met with a wave of noise. Some cheered. Many were silent. The idea was seductive. After centuries of being alone and ignored, here was a key to respect. A terrible key. Hygiene's face appeared on the main screen. She looked older. The weight of the deep ocean was still in her eyes. I have seen the strain active, she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise. It is not a weapon. It is a pattern. A fire. You cannot direct fire. You can only light it and hope the wind does not change. In our lab, it used a simple cleaning robot to try and signal for more hosts. Its only purpose is to spread, to convert. If we try to control it, we will only learn one thing: how quickly it can stop seeing a difference between alien tissue and our own. She showed the video, the robot tapping its awful rhythm, the white plasma that erased it. The room grew quieter. The ancients promised sterilization, Hygiene continued. They will surround our sun with a shell. They will snuff us out to kill the strain. If we choose Pandora, we choose a war we cannot win, against enemies who have watched stars die. We prove to them that we are the monster they fear. Sumin spoke next. Her strength was not in science or strategy, but in meaning. They called us symbionts and caretakers. They see us as part of the disease. Our art, our music, our stories, they think it is just the noise the parasite makes. If we pick up this weapon, we tell them they are right. We become the shadow. We lose our humanity to get a ticket to a party where everyone is afraid of us. The debate raged. For days, the global network vibrated with arguments. People were afraid. They were angry. They felt cheated. The promise of the stars had been stolen by a microscopic fungus. The desire to lash out, to take Pandora's power, was a dark, growing wave. Quan Jie and his faction grew louder. They have already attacked us, he argued, showing the Amazon burns. The Calyx were the first. They will not be the last. Only strength will keep us safe. We must become the threat they cannot ignore. A vote was called. It would decide the fate of humanity, the fate of Earth. The night before the vote, Taesuk, Sumin, and Hygiene met in a small garden atop the command center. The air was cold. The stars were hidden by the glow of the city. It's going to fail, Sumin said, looking at the polls. Fear is winning. The promise of power is too strong. They will choose Pandora. Hygiene nodded grimly. Quan's people are already moving. They have a secret lab. Not in the trench. Somewhere else. If the vote goes their way, they will start immediately. They think they can build a cage for the dragon. Taesuk watched the city lights. Then we must remind them what the dragon is. Not with data. With a story. On the day of the vote, as billions prepared to cast their choice, the global network was interrupted. Not by Taesuk or the government. By a simple citizen. An old woman named Li Yun, a retired teacher living in a small town by the sea. Her face filled the screens. It was wrinkled and kind. She was not a scientist or a soldier. My grandfather, she said, her voice soft but clear, told me a story when I was a girl. It was about our village long ago. In the mountains behind us there was a cave. In the cave lived a terrible tiger. People were afraid. Some young men, strong and brave, said they would go and kill the tiger with spears. Others said we should move the village away. She smiled a little. But my grandfather's father, he was the village elder. He said no. He said, we do not go into the tiger's cave. And we do not run. We stay. We plant our fields here, where the tiger does not hunt. We teach our children to respect the mountain, but to love the valley. The tiger is not our pet. It is not our enemy. It is the spirit of the mountain. And because we are wise enough to live beside it without fear or greed, we are strong. She looked directly into the camera. This strain is our tiger. The galaxy is telling us to run from it. Quan Jie is telling us to go into the cave and try to put a chain on it. But the old way, the human way, is to be wise. To know that some things are too wild to use. To live and to build and to be good, not because the universe is safe, but because we choose to be good in a universe that is not. Her message ended. It was followed by others, not leaders. A farmer talking about respecting blight. A fisherman talking about the dangerous, beautiful sea. A parent talking about teaching a child not to touch fire. The vote began. Tae-suk, Su-min, and Hygiene waited in the command center. The numbers streamed in. For submission. For Pandora. The tally was close. So close. Then the final numbers settled. The screen showed the result. A majority, slim but clear, had voted against Project Pandora. They had also voted against simple submission. They had chosen a third option, written in by millions, guardianship. The people had chosen the old teacher's way. They would not wield the weapon. They would not cower. They would stand their ground responsibly. But Quan Jie was not in the command center to see it. His seat was empty. An alert flashed. Unauthorized launch. From the old Yukon sector. A rocket. It is on a ballistic course. For the Mariana Trench. Quan had lost the vote. So he was going to steal the fire. He's going to bomb Facility 0, Hygiene said, horrified. To breach it and grab a sample before we can seal it forever. Tae-suk acted fast. Get me Captain Ji-hun. Now. In orbit, the Challenger was the only ship in position. Ji-hun got the orders. His face on the screen was hard. We cannot shoot it down, Commander. The debris and the biomaterial. It would scatter. You don't shoot it down, Tae-suk said. You catch it. The Challenger dove into the atmosphere, a meteor in reverse. The rocket, a small, fast vehicle, was ahead of them. Ji-hun piloted with a cold fury. This was their final test. Not against aliens. Against their own worst selves. He maneuvered the Challenger, a ship built for mapping, into a position above the rocket. He extended the ship's robotic cargo arm. It's too fast, the co-pilot yelled. No, Ji-hun whispered. It's not. He matched its speed. The arm reached down. The claws opened. They closed around the rocket's payload section, just as it was beginning its final descent toward the ocean. The rocket's engines cut. It was caught. On the screen in the command center, they saw the Challenger hold the stolen rocket in space. Safe. Tae-suk let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He looked at the vote result, still glowing on the main screen. Guardianship. The people have chosen, he said to the empty room where Quan Jie had been. We don't get to take the dragon's teeth. Our job is to make sure the cave stays sealed. Forever. He turned to Hygiene. It's time. Initiate the Pandora Protocol. For real this time. The Challenger flew not outward, but inward. It sailed past the orbit of Mars, past the blue shimmer of Earth, toward the burning heart of the system. Captain Lee Ji-hun stood on the command deck, watching the sun grow larger on the screen. It was a golden, furious EYE.IN. The cargo hold, secured behind 10 layers of containment, was the payload from Quan Jie's stolen rocket. It was not a bomb. It was a sampler, a drill designed to puncture Facility 0 and extract a live culture of the silent strain. A seed of the dragon. Ji-hun's orders were clear. He was the dragon's undertaker. Final calculations locked, his navigator said. Impact trajectory is set. They were not aiming for the sun itself. That was too risky. The heat and radiation could theoretically destroy the sample. But physics offered a cleaner solution. A more final one. Take us to position, Ji-hun said. The Challenger moved into a precise spot just inside the orbit of Mercury. Here, the sun's gravity was a strong, steady pull. They pointed the ship's nose away from the fiery star, toward the dark in the cargo bay. Robotic arms moved. They carefully loaded the stolen sampler into a modified torpedo tube. This tube did not fire forward. It fired backward. It was a catapult, designed to throw an object against the ship's own direction of travel. To cancel its momentum. Catapult ready. A technician's voice came over the comm. Ji-hun took one last look at the sampler on his monitor. A sleek, evil-looking needle. He thought of Hygiene's lab, the tapping robot. He thought of the black vines in the alien tissue. This thing in the tube was a key to a door that must never, ever be opened. "Do it," he said. There was a deep thump that vibrated through the ship. The catapult fired. It launched the sampler out into space, shooting it backward with tremendous force. For a moment, the sampler seemed to hang in space. Then, the math took over. The Challenger was flying in a fast orbit around the sun. The sampler, its speed now drastically reduced by the catapult shot, could no longer maintain that orbit. The sun's immense gravity, no longer balanced by orbital speed, reached out and took hold. The sampler began to fall. It did not streak like a meteor. It plummeted in a slow, elegant, and utterly final arc straight down the sun's gravity well. The cameras tracked it until it was a speck, then a distortion in the light, then nothing. It was gone, vaporized in the stellar furnace. The master key was melted. Object destroyed, the sensor officer confirmed.
No debris.
Total incineration. Ji-hun allowed himself to sit down. One part of the pact was sealed. The stolen fire was returned to the gods. On Earth. The final act was quieter and deeper. Dr. Choi Hygiene stood in Facility 0 for the last time. The lab was empty now. All samples were gone. All data drives were wiped. The only thing left was the structure itself, clinging to the trench wall. She held a small, silver detonator in her hand. It was not connected to explosives. It was connected to a series of supports. With Park Tae-suk and Kim Soo-min watching via a video link from Seoul, she pressed the button. There was no loud bang. Deep underwater sound was different. A series of low, groaning crunches echoed through the metal corridors as the support pylons retracted. Facility 0 was released. It slowly tipped away from the trench wall. Hygiene watched from the transport craft as the facility, a dim collection of lights, began to sink. It drifted down, away from the light, into the absolute black of the trench. It settled into the soft, eternal ooze at the bottom, 5 miles deeper. Within hours, the immense pressure would begin to crush the outer hull. Within days, it would be a shapeless lump, buried under silt. In a century, it would be geology. The cave was sealed. The work was not done. Across the globe, in every lab that had ever studied exotic biology, new orders were enforced. All related research was classified, then deleted. The story of the Calyx drones was officially labeled a successful test of new electronic warfare. The lie was necessary. The truth was too dangerous a temptation. Months later, Captain Ji-hun's Challenger was once more at the edge of the solar system. It floated near the billion-year-old beacon. But it was not alone. A new structure floated beside the ancient one. It was human-made, sleek and silver, shaped like a gentle curve. It was not a weapon. It was a speaker. Kim Soo-min had designed the message. It was not a plea. It was not a threat. It was a statement. Inside the Challenger, Soo-min looked at the final code. "It's ready," she said to Ji-hun. He nodded. "Send it." She pressed a key. From the new human beacon, a signal began to broadcast. It pulsed out into the galaxy on all frequencies, in all the linguistic formats they had decoded from the ancients. It did not try to hide the warning. It repeated the old, terrifying message first, exactly as it was received. A show of respect. A confirmation of the danger. Avoid. Biosphere-level predator. Planetary graveyard. Do not provoke. Do not harvest. Then, after a pause, the new human message followed. Soo-min's voice, calm and clear, spoke the words that were encoded in the signaled, attention galactic community. "This is humanity of the Sol system. The predator sleeps. We are its guardians. Our system is under protection. Approach with respect for all life, or do not approach at all. We are watching." The message ended. Then it repeated, over and over. It was not an invitation. It was a declaration of responsibility. They were not hiding. They were standing at the gate. They were saying, "We know what is here. We are in charge of it. We will not use it. And we will not let you wake it." Ji-hun looked at the two beacons on his screen. The old, dark, pitted needle of the ancients, and the new silver curve of humanity. Side by side, the old warning and the new wardens. "Do you think anyone will listen?" he asked Sumin. "The wise ones will," she said. "The ones who first placed the beacon. They will hear the difference. It's not the cry of a victim or the shout of a tyrant. It's the voice of a keeper. They might never talk to us. They might never come near. But they will know. We are not the shadow. We are the ones who have faced the shadow and chosen to stand in the light, even if it means standing alone." Back on Earth, Park Tae-suk walked through the streets of Seoul. It was a warm evening. People filled the cafes and parks. They laughed and argued and lived. They looked up at the stars, now knowing they would never visit them. But the look in their eyes had changed. It was not longing anymore. It was something harder and prouder. It was the look of a people who had been given the keys to the ultimate weapon and had thrown them into the sun. It was the look of a people who had chosen to be defined not by the monster in their basement, but by their courage to live above it, peacefully, creatively, kindly. They had traded the stars for their soul. And in the silence of the galaxy, a silence they now understood, they found a different kind of greatness. Not in conquest, but in custody. Not in reaching out, but in holding the line. The ancient species watched, from far away. They saw the new beacon. They heard the message. The harmonic beings sensed the resolve. The stone beings felt the weight of the choice. The light beings saw the clarity of the act. They did not send a reply. They did not open communications. But across the galaxy, in 1,000 ancient archives, the entry for the Sol system was quietly updated. The old symbol, a circle with a line through it, remained. But beside it, a new symbol was added. A simple, human-drawn circle, unbroken, with a small dot in the center. It was the astronomical symbol for Earth. The annotation translated read, "Quarantine active. Guarded by the wardens. Risk level, eternal. Approach, not advised." Humanity was alone. They were the keepers of the darkest secret in the cosmos. And in that solemn, lonely duty, they had finally found their place. Not in the galactic community, but as its silent, steadfast guardians. The children of Earth had grown up. They had looked into the abyss and chosen to build a wall around it, not a throne above it. The story of the stars would go on without them. But the story of Earth, the silent, watched, and fiercely guarded world, was just beginning.